All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our Datacom office hours. Before I hand you off to the team for the session itself, just a couple things I need to cover. First, as soon as I'm done talking, I'm going to go through and I'm going to unmute all of your lines in the system so that you'll have the ability to go on and off mute as you would like. We want this to be an interactive session, so please feel free to come off of mute and ask a question or contribute to the conversation. We are, as always, we're recording this session. The replay will be available out in the Datacom community probably tomorrow morning. So if you aren't speaking actively, we would ask you to please put your line back on mute. And if I do miss you when I'm unmuting your lines, just feel free to just send me a message in the chat or or in the questions box, and I will go ahead and unmute your line. That's it for me. So go ahead, Nikisha, and I'm gonna work on unmuting everybody.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining, everyone. My name is Nikisha Newberry, and today is our session for our Datacom office hours as part of our monthly effort to give value to you through our communities. We will be covering some material today that could be pre-GA, so this is our disclaimer that any information is subject to change or withdrawal by Broadcom at any time without notice. So for our agenda today, our Datacom office hours is really a good chance to tap into our subject matter experts. You can share any topics and requirements that you have that are top of mind, and it gives us a chance to discuss recent enhancements or ideas, or basically pain points or any new topics that you might have Datacom related. It's also a great opportunity for you to network with other customers, partners, our user group leaders, and of course the Datacom product leadership team, as well as our developer staff. So this is meant to be a live Q&A session, live and interactive. So we encourage everyone to come off mute and utilize the chat. We really want this to be as engaging as possible. So what we can start off with is just kind of open discussion. We'd like to hear from you all what discussion topics you would like to talk about. And that's where I'd like to spend the bulk of this meeting, to be able to talk about the things that are most important to you. We can have a discussion related to feature adoption and usage, and then we can share some product news and updates. We'll give you some updates on our mainframe technical exchange, talk about some recent and upcoming enhancements and beyond code offerings that we have available. So with that, I'll jump right in. I want to share real briefly some changes that we've had internally. So here has been historically our Datacom product leadership team: Kevin Schuma, our director of engineering; Vince Abadi, our engineering manager; our two architects, Eric and Dave Ross; Dale Russell, product owner; myself as product manager; and Sheila Miller as our offering manager. And we've had a few changes, well, actually additions, no subtractions, but additions to our product leadership team. So as one of the biggest changes is Kevin Schuma has changed from being our director of engineering into a senior database strategic role. So he's more taking on a technical lead role, and in replacement, Jazz Singh is now our director of engineering. In addition, we've added another modernization architect, Vamsi, which some of you have been seeing him on some of our calls that we've been having one-on-one as we talk about different modernization technologies with the REST API and health check. And so Vamsi is now as part of our team there, working with Dave Ross. And then another addition to our leadership team is Richard Gilbert, who is now our technical team lead manager, who is now working alongside with Vince Abadi as manager for our engineering staff. And I'd like to open the floor and let Kevin, Richard, or Vamsi be able to speak if they're online and be willing to share a little bit more details. Kevin, do you want to start with you and talk about more of your role change?
Thank you, Nikisha. Yeah, so everyone has known for years and years and years, I have not only been an engineering manager, but I've also been a user of Datacom, and I typically get involved with all the new features and so forth. But after spending 32 years managing Datacom amongst the different companies and so forth, I approached management about looking for someone maybe a little bit younger to take over and to lead the Datacom product forward. And management has worked really well with us in getting this put together. So Jazz is joining us as a director of engineering. He's been a director of engineering at CA for other products. He's now picking up the database products, and he'll have Vince reporting to him, as well as on the IDMS side, Steve Urquhart. What I'm going to be doing, or what I am focused on doing, is for the next several years, I'll still be here helping to lead the product, but in a more strategic database role, and hopefully be working a lot more with the customers. So Nikisha and I have been working together, building out what we call our Beyond Code offerings for Datacom. These are where we get involved with our customer base to help them specifically address problems that they have that may not be something we do within the code, but maybe something that we can help the customer come to, get an answer, get a utility, get something going for them. So my role really continues on. In many cases, a lot of what we've done in the past with working with customers and making sure that we are able to help them succeed with their business use. So I'll turn it back to you, Nikisha.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Vince, do you want to introduce Richard and talk about Richard? Would you like to come off mute and talk about your new role?
Sure. Richard has been been an engineer, part of the engineering team here for a while, and he has shown a great deal of leadership aspects. So therefore, talking with management, he was one of the eligible people to be, come in and step up and take on that role. Richard, you want to say something?
I believe you're on mute, just so you know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Sorry about that. The the mic has an inline mute button that was also on. Yeah, Vince pretty much covered my intro, so I don't have much else. I'm just enjoying the new challenges that are coming my way. So
Awesome. Thank you, Richard. Jazz, you'll be able to meet in person at our upcoming Plano MTE conference if any of you attend. I don't know, do we have Vamsi on the line as well?
I don't think so.
Don't think so. Well, any questions from the audience? Anybody want to ask any questions regarding this leadership change? Please feel free to come off mute or use the chat. All right, well, moving on. Well, now's the time I'd like to really hear from you. So if everyone could unmute your lines or utilize the chat, we'd like to hear who is all attending with us today. Maybe go around the room and talk about what's top of mind for you. And I can't see participants, Len, so maybe you can help me out on this part.
Everyone who's on has been unmuted. I guess everyone is just being shy. Which looking at some of the names, I know for a fact that some of you are not shy at all.
Nikisha.
Hello.
Hi, Clyde.
Yes, hi
I
Clyde,
have
how
a
are
question for the group in the light of the pending retirement of Chorus Software Manager. How many people have already moved to a new system, either just downloading the software directly or going through the ZOS offering? So I'd be interested in a discussion on that subject.
ZOSMF is the new standard going forward from CSM, and support for CSM will be dropping June, I believe. Dale, is it June or July of this
June
year?
30th. Yeah, it's June 30th. Yep.
We have webcasts and resources to be able to help customers transition. I would encourage you, to take note of those. We also plan, from a Datacom perspective, to highlight ZOSMF in our upcoming MTE coming up in Plano. We also have a YouTube video that we published on our transitioning to ZOSMF and utilizing ZOSMF and how to go about using those workflows. Where are you in your transition, Clyde, or what? Do you have any specific questions or concerns?
No, I'm still using Chorus. I haven't made the step forward yet. I've also on occasion when Chorus hasn't worked for me, just downloaded the maintenance PTFs directly from the CA support site, which is a process that works for me. And I think the IBM, one of our IBM engineers has looked at the service order process, and I've done a bit of that as well. So I guess I'm thinking of moving somewhere else, but I haven't actually made any firm decisions yet. Chorus is still working fine for me.
Yeah, when that end of support happens, I believe CSM will no longer work for.
Right, I guess I'm gathering that it's not just an end of maintaining the product, but it'll actually cut off the access to the maintenance and stuff like that. So it is a hard end.
Yes, it's a hard end. It's not like other end of supports where you could technically still kind of use, just won't be able to get support. It actually will not be working anymore.
Yeah,
or fully, yeah.
Hi there, it's Owen here. Just to let you know where we are on this. Currently, we're on a version of the operating system and a service level of the operating system that doesn't include ZOSMF. And indeed, it doesn't even allow us to use internet, what's it called? Receive order, internet service retrieval.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, Owen.
Yeah. So I've certainly used the internet service retrieval. It's a, for those who don't need to use the graphical interface and the full ZOSMF, and that because that has quite a lot of CPU overhead. The internet service retrieval, which we used on our sandbox environment, works supremely well. It's just 4 batch jobs that effectively upload your the FMIDs that are in your current CSI to Broadcom. It then compares what's in your CSI to the latest maintenance, and you either select to download the recommended maintenance, which will effectively get you to a sort of CARS level, or all maintenance, which will get you through to latest published maintenance. It's really, really simple, and once you've set it up, there's some security things to set up in your security product, top secret ACF2 or RECF. But once it's there, it's really, really simple, and I love it. We can just see everything in there. Unfortunately, we can't use it yet because we're not on the required level of the operating system. We're hoping to get that done later this year, but it won't be before June the 30th. So, for the moment, we're just using the manual download of PTFs, as they become available for that site.
Yeah, if you're fairly current, then that is a workable system. There's not too many to download.
Yes, indeed, and because we're like you, we're validation partners, so we do keep pretty current. But if I was upgrading a CSI that was a long way out of date and you needed several years worth of maintenance, then either ZOSMF or the internet service retrieval will work equally well. So yeah, looking forward to doing that as soon as we can for this particular client.
Thanks, Owen.
No worries.
Any other topics or any other users want to speak on the phone? Who else do we have with us today? Thank you, Owen and Clyde, for joining with us. Let's see, I have another slide of, oh, go ahead. Hi, Tom.
I was gonna say this is Tom Beisel too. And Clyde, I think I'm about in the same place as you, where I'm still using CSM, but I update about twice a year, and we just finished our production update about a month ago. So I'm going to be moving to something else before we do our next update. And yeah, the internet service retrieval looks good. I'm kind of relying on my system programmers to decide what they want to do. They've used ZOSMF a little bit, so I'm going to be meeting with them to figure out where we're going, if we're going to be using that or just SMP from here on out.
Yeah, in my experience, they both work equally well. It's just if you want to be able to see, if you're a traditional systems programmer that likes to be able to see all the outputs, particularly when something goes wrong, to be able to diagnose it, I think the internet service retrieval for the traditional systems programmers is better, because you can, it's lower cost in terms of CPU overhead, and setup is much quicker than ZOSMF. But for new systems programmers and new mainframers, ZOSMF is a nice graphical user interface, just like CSM was. So they both have their place and they both work well. You just have to be on a reasonably current version of the operating system.
Yes.
Tom, are you on a current version of the operating system as well, or do you have upgrade issues?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay. Let's see, I have a suggestion list of topics. What is top of mind for you? That's something I'd like to hear from everyone. And any new or upcoming business requirements that we can address?
Well, from our perspective, first of all, that operating system upgrade, which is obviously generating lots of upgrades of other products. Obviously, we maintain Datacom nice and up to date, but lots of other things weren't. So we're doing that to get that operating system up to current levels. And the other thing for us is we're looking to decommission another database management system. It's not one of yours, so I won't say which one it is. And so that's why I've raised a couple of ideas for some SQL syntax enhancements. There are things that are available on that database management system, and we'd like them to be available on Datacom in order to make use to transition those applications over to Datacom. So that's what our main focus for that year is, those two projects.
Nice.
Yeah, Nikisha, are those pending or potentially pending SQL enhancements up for discussion, or would you rather we get that information?
Definitely. If they are definitely up for discussion. Anything top of mind for you?
Yeah, I've just been reading about the new group options, and I think I wasn't aware of them, not having access to another DBMS like Owen, but yeah, I think they look pretty neat just for day-to-day SQL processing. It doesn't need to be anything specific. I'm just thinking about like accounting table reporting and stuff like that. The new group by functions, I like that. So I'm looking forward to seeing those available.
Dale or somebody else on the team, would you all like to give an overview of this enhancement for the rest of the audience to be aware of?
I can't get off mute. Oh, I'm off mute. I'll try, yes. We specifically have thought of 3 enhancements for group by that are in syntax that many other SQL implementations have. One is a roll up, which gives totals for the groups and a grand total. One is grouping sets, which lets you choose, I want to group it by column, or give information by column A or column B or column C, whatever. And then there's a cube, which kind of does all of the combinations. So if you were doing your grouping by columns A and B, it'll do A only, B only, A and B, together, all of them. And if you have more columns, I guess it gets into more groupings, but I don't know all the specific details, but lots of flexibility in how you do reporting. So we talked about that in our customer validation call recently, and we have begun some of the initial work on that. So it'll come out of the pipeline a little later.
Yeah, Dale, where I really see, like when Clyde made the comment, there are probably hundreds of data reporters that we've delivered that run against accounting tables and basically do things like, roll up each command within a transaction and give you a total, subtotal, and then roll up all the transactions all the individual transactions to a total for the transaction, and then roll up all of the transactions to give you a total for the kicks. And this is something the extension to the group by option will allow us to do in a SQL statement, instead of having to do multiple sub-selects and kind of bend unnaturally in order just to get subtotals and totals and grand totals. So it'll be very powerful for anyone who's using SQL to report transactional data that you just need to get local, sort of a you know, the local level, the subtotal level, the total level, and then the grand total level. I just wanted to kind of throw it out there.
Sure.
I put the link to the IBM documentation that I found very useful when it was given to me in the validation call the other day. In the questions point, is that the equivalent of chat, or is there another chat area? Can people see the question that I just put in there, or the comment I just put in there?
Len, can you see a question? I don't have access to it on my level, but
Oh, okay. It's a
Len
link.
Thompson?
It's a link, Len.
Yep, I got it. I'll put it in the chat so everyone can see it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, Kevin and Clyde are both right in those sort of things. It is very common in other database management systems that have these functions, particularly for sort of business intelligence type functions. And as Kevin says, rather than building the set and then grouping it and then rebuilding the set and grouping it, you build the set once and you group it in multiple different ways. So, you know, sales by salesman, or sales by week, or sales by month, all that kind of stuff. You just build the set once and it then groups it in multiple different ways. So it's much more efficient. I must admit, I wasn't aware of it because I'm mainly a Datacom person, but when it was shown to me, it was, oh yeah, no, this makes sense. So that's definitely one of the ones that we want. Just to mention that there is another one that we use in this other database management system, which is rank, and that's where again you can rank the sales by you know, top salesman, or top order value, or top item number of items sold, all that kind of thing. So you can say I want the top 5 of these products sold and everything like that. So that's another function that I think I've raised a separate idea for that, that we'd also like to see. Again, common in other database management systems, and we just like to see that so that we can port these applications straight across rather than having to do these kind of things programmatically.
Thank you for posting the idea, Owen. I always look for ways to make our SQL interface better.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you guys want to focus on things that actually meet a client's need. I know you've been asking this for some time, several years, in fact. It's always difficult to get an answer from development, but of course, when development want it, they want it now. You know, they've now come back. You've introduced several, you know, syntax enhancements for date functions and other things that people have asked for, and it's been great that the continuous delivery model has been delivering this. But this is just another couple that have cropped up for us, and it sounds like, both from what Clyde said and others have said on the validation call, that it's quite popular.
Nice to hear. Any other pain points or processes you would like simplified? Anything else that Datacom can do for you? This is to everyone on the call.
I did have one question for the folks on the call. So this is Kevin, obviously. So working with Tom, and I've got a little POC that I built to extract information from the data query backup file to kind of make an Excel spreadsheet so that you can get an idea of all your data queries and what, you know, how many data queries, DQLs, SQLs, dialogues you have, what comments they have buried in the text, what the actual unstrung text would look like if you just, you know, took all the blanks and all the comments out, and, you know, the primary table, or right now the first table that is being hit by the query, query command type, all that kind of stuff. Is anyone else facing, you know, challenges around trying to determine how many queries they have, who's using them, and what they do?
It's certainly something we've looked at before. It sounds like your tool would actually go beyond some of the things that we've done. What we do on a regular basis is to retrieve the execution, the source from the execution from the RxX tapes. the RxX data sets, so that we can see which data queries are actually being used. And that's useful to us because a lot of queries are not necessarily saved in the library. A lot of our developers and power users just write a query, run it, and sign off. So the RxX gives us that's the source of those queries that are run, and we use that for regression testing. So when a new feature in SQL or a new version of SQL is implemented, we run a representative sample of those queries. Let's say something's been enhanced in left join, yeah, then we dig out all the data queries that have done left joins and run them through and make sure that they give the same results. So that's what we're doing to pick up data queries and find out which ones are actually being used.
Okay, so this is going to be, to your point, this is really what's been saved, right? What's out there, when it was used last, that sort of thing. So it doesn't do the ad hoc part of it, but if there's interest in it, I mean, it's a POC, it's not a real tool yet or anything like that, but it definitely is something that Tom and I have been working on to help, his shop get a handle on the queries that they have. And, it's always a challenge when you have thousands and thousands of queries to look at.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the last use date, that is actually stored in the library itself. So you can pick it up, if you kind of puts it,
this is one of those deals, Owen, where you take all that data, which is hard to look at and report or on a green screen, throw it in an Excel spreadsheet, and you can put a filter on it, and you can get everything that has been used in the last 5 years.
Right. So we do that, including all the ad hoc ones, because it's coming from the RxX.
Right.
We store that in another Datacom table. So we've got the source of everything that's run over the last several years, that we can download to us. Well, we actually have it as a data source to a spreadsheet and can do all that kind of stuff on it. But I'd be interested in seeing your tool, because you may have bits of it that we could reuse, and I can show you what we've done if you want.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a relatively simple piece of code. So, and again, it's POC. So we obviously are looking to see if it solves problems for people before we want to go down the path of making it fully developable.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, I had another discussion
sorry.
topic. Hello.
I wanted to add some more to that too. Sorry, I was muted again and couldn't get, and I had to have Len take me off mute. So there was. It's nice to see how many queries are out there, what's being used, what's not being used. But I think another nice thing to come out of the design thinking workshop and this proof of concept that we have is that we're taking the queries out of the data query CICS library and making them available in a spreadsheet right now, so that we have lots of newer users that are hitting our databases with tools outside of CICS regions and old standard tools, and it's nice to see the queries in a format that people are used to seeing them and can copy and paste them into other more modern tools that are going through the server JDBC connections or ODBC connections. So that's a nice another nice feature that come out of this proof of concept. And Owen, I'd like to see what you're doing there too for your. It sounds interesting to me what you're doing to find which queries are being used. That would be a nice addition to this whole project.
Cool. Happy to share that. Yep.
Maybe you could share that on an upcoming call, Owen. Or at our MT.
Definitely could do. Yeah, I mean, I'm
We
happy
put
to
that-
share it directly with Kevin and Tom now. Yeah, we could definitely have it as a topic of it if people think it would be worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. We actually we published some recent enhancements. I was also curious if anybody had adopted anything that we've recently delivered or had any feedback for us. And we could talk about any of these enhancements if anyone has any questions about them.
Well, on the VSAM linear datasets FXX support, we're currently working as a validation partner on something that will allow us to separate out the FXX using a different name because we're in simplify mode. So we need to rename it as part of the transition to VSAM. The high-level qualifier needs to change. Yeah, we're in the process of testing that. I know Clyde's also testing that as well. The DBUT support for wider screens, yes, we make use of dynamic terminals, and that's working really well. Very happy to see that. Thank you.
Are you using that in production?
It hasn't got to production yet. I need an outage to implement that in Kix, but that will be going to production soon. I mean, DBT is not something you use every day. It tends to be a diagnostic tool, so it's of more use actually in development and testing environments when we're tracking down bugs in applications. But it will get to production soon.
Yeah, I mean, hate to say this, but in my days, I've never let DBUT actually get into production because of its ability to show data.
Yeah, it's heavily protected in
Yeah.
production. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did anyone install the service update packs SU2301? Does anybody use on this call our service update packs as a way of getting current, or do you just utilize the other channels we were talking about earlier?
I mean, for us, we stay current on a much more frequent basis. So by the time that pack came out, we were beyond it already. Yeah.
Anyone else on the call using service update packs? Level set. So do we have a?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, Nikisha. I was going to ask whether I think the level set is a great idea. We don't use the IBM registry, but I was wondering if anyone does use that. Whether they found the changes beneficial.
Certainly, we're on level set 15101. Like Clyde, I think it's a great idea to have this. It's something that a number of users have asked for over the years, so really good to see that. If you're talking about the SCRT function registry, that kind of thing, is that what you're referring to, Clyde?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Again, we're on too old a release of the operating system, so we can't access that yet.
Yeah, I guess our contract with IBM, we outsource to them as such that we don't need or use that or whatever. I've been told we're not interested in the changes, but just wondering if anyone else was benefiting from it.
It's going to be interesting to see because I mean, we're on Z Cloud or Z Cloud,
yeah,
and the SCRT stuff is actually collected by IBM on a different LPAR that we don't have access to, because that's a different team. So I'm not sure whether we're ever going to have access to this stuff. I know we don't at the moment because we're on too old an operating system, but there's a question mark about whether we would ever have access to the SCRT stuff.
There's two things. This data feeds into the SCRT reporting that you run. Your site runs monthly usually and sends off to IBM or Datacom. I mean Broadcom. It's also available in SysView. If you go into SysView, you can use the FXE command, and you can see the same information there.
So again, FXE doesn't work in SysView because it says we're on too old a release of the operating system. Yeah, and the SCRT stuff. Yes, they do run that report, but they run it on an LPAR that we don't have access to. because it's done by IBM as part of their Z Cloud. Yeah, we're on a shared mainframe with lots of other clients, and we can't, so they don't want us to be able to see the SCRT data for their other clients.
Gotcha. I think every LPAR gets reported on usually, but if it's their environment, then yes, maybe they wouldn't let you see yours because then they might let you be seeing everything. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to see ours, but I just don't know. No, I know we can't now, and I'll be interested to see if we can when we get the upgrade done.
Yeah, Dale, I'd be curious. Is there an infrastructure, an IBM infrastructure underpinning SCRT that if it wasn't defined, the FXE function would not be any use to us?
SCRT reporting is based on SMF records.
Okay.
And as Datacom and other mainframe products do these calls to say log to the SRT, log, there's a piece of IBM code that receives those and constructs appropriate SMF records periodically that get fed into the report ultimately. So SMF records is the infrastructure behind it.
Right. I want to say, without remembering exactly, that a while ago I just tried the FXE function out of curiosity, and I want to say it had ended my sysview session.
Uh-oh.
So I pushed it into the back burner thinking, okay, it's not defined, I can't use it. Because I'd already been told that we weren't using SCRT. So maybe I should find some time to go back and circle back on that and see if it's a real problem.
I would pursue it it seems like if you can issue the FXE command, it certainly shouldn't happen.
Yeah. All right. I'll take some time to do that. Thanks.
But Dale, but in the general point of view, the way SCRT reporting is set up, I don't think a site can turn it off without causing. There's a IBM has a, because IBM uses it for all their licensing now. There's some sort of red flag if you mess with the contents of the file, or you turn off the collection in the file, it sends red flags out, and people looking at SCRT reports, whoever the experts are that look at them, can tell that somebody was fishing with the file. So in general, Clyde, I don't think they can turn it off without doing something bad. Now, I don't know about the older releases of ZEOS, like the versions Owen's running on. I don't know if those are still were that tight, but since IBM has gone almost purely to the licensing based off SCRT reporting, I doubt that it'd be turned off. So it's probably a bug in sysview.
No, I'll check it out. Thank you.
Right, good discussion. Any other questions from anyone on any of our latest enhancements? And I have another list of other enhancements that we published that are older than that. SQL hash join and overlay, and all the way down to buffer pools by area and VS Code.
Certainly hash join. We're using that at the moment in non-production environments. I need to get the code level into production so that we can start using hash join. But we have seen for certain queries significant performance improvements. So that's a very welcome addition. vSAM linear, we've been playing with that. Again, it's not in production yet, but it's working well in non-production environments. Once we get into production, we'll be interested to see how much more we're offloading to the zip on that. SQL Performance Analyzer, yep, it's great. Again, we're using it in non-production environments because we need to get the latest code level into production. And that's a really, really great tool. I would recommend anyone who uses SQL at their site to implement the SQL Performance Analyzer. It really is a must-have. Oh, and buffer pools by area, again. We have got some of that in production for data areas. I think we've got the code level that allows that, and that's working well there. and we're looking forward to getting more of that in once we get the new code level into production.
Oh, and have you done any kind of comparison between 8 gigs of BPA versus 8 gigs of covered?
Yes, we have. It's proved beneficial, obviously, to the individual areas that we moved into buffer pool by area, but the slight surprise, it's obvious once you realise, was that actually it significantly improved the general buffer pool stats, because no longer are blocks being copied into the data pool and syspool buffer pools in order to actually access the data, because it's in its own buffer pool by area. So it actually improves the ratio, the reuse ratio for the standard buffer pool. So overall, it was a significant performance improvement for the ones we've done. The level of code we've got at the moment, we're limited to only a small number of data areas. Our heaviest hit data sets are index areas by far. So once we get the new code level in, we're looking forward to some really significant improvements there.
Yeah, because that's so. I'm working with a site that has it in production for a very large processing volume, and what we're basing it on is what I call dominant processes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird, with doing all the site reviews that I do. I would say about 30 to 40% of our sites will have a dominant process where there's just 1 or 2 data sets that are just 50% of the load, or in this case, during the online day, this one data set was close to 70% of the load. And so we put in BPA, and like you said, it's still a big chunk of the load, but everybody else isn't being affected by it. The domination isn't there that you saw with covered, because even though we had it covered, it was still have to pull it to the buffer pools to run it, right? So I was just wondering if you saw the same sort of thing I'm saying.
Absolutely.
For sites, for sites, just look at, either run, Owen's, what should we cover with MRDF query? Because that basically shows you your heavy hitters.
That old one,
right? Yeah, it still works, right? It still shows you. And what I always focus on is is there 2 or 3 things that are dominating the environment, and then consider the buffer pools by area, which, like you said, it just basically makes everybody else less affected. So, that's just open commentary. Thanks, Owen.
Yeah, no, sure. I agree with everything you said there, and we're definitely a candidate for exactly what you're talking about there. Particularly we've got 2 index data sets that we're really looking forward to getting in there. So it's significant. I really haven't seen a downside to converting covered over to be buffer pool by area. For that top 5, let's say, that top 5 data sets, moving across from covered to this seems to me, pretty much a standard thing that everyone should do.
I have another quick comment based on something you lighted over, Owen, there, mentioning the zip offload for VSAM data sets. I think that's probably a forgotten aspect of it. A big motivation to go to VSAM.
Absolutely, particularly for sites that haven't done a huge amount of tuning, and therefore are not already in that sort of 95+% zip offload. The fact that VSAM IO is able to run on the zip means that those sites will actually see the biggest benefit. The sites that haven't done a lot of tuning, the ones that have, you're still going to see a benefit, because everyone talks about, oh well, 95% is already being offloaded. Well, great, but after a while, that 5% becomes the new 100%. Management want to know, well, what can you do for me now? So yes, increasing it from 95 to 98% is now the target. And definitely, that's a big thing. There are all sorts of other benefits to VSAM linear. I think eventually everyone will move everything across to VSAM linear. It will be the way everything will go, for all sorts of reasons. Pervasive encryption being obviously a driver for those that need that. But there are significant performance benefits, and the sort of extent constraint relief, all the other things that you get with vSAN Linear. I think it's, if people haven't looked at it yet, I recommend you do have a look. It's been GA for a while now, and it's working well for us. In the environments we've put it in. I think, Kevin, you've got a site where they've converted everything, and they've seen benefits across the board in production even.
Yeah, so it's fully in production, 20 terabytes of data. And the one downside, I mean, they've seen performance benefits, they've seen zip benefits and so forth. The one downside to the vSAN linear data sets that everybody should be aware of is it will burn some DASD. They had standardized on, the 27998, unfortunately, when you go to vSAM, you have to go to 28K, which does not fit. If you want to do that same 27998, 28K is a bad size, right? So you have to kind of pull back into what your sizes are, because vSAM linear data sets can only be on a 4K boundary. So the one downside was when we realized it, right, and the sizes that they wanted to use, I wrote a little query to run against dynamic system tables and basically used it to update their allocation JCL, because you're going to allocate, you have to, when you go from BDAM to vSAM, you have to allocate a vSAM file. It's a completely different allocation process. So instead of just taking the number of tracks or cylinders you had in BDAM and going over to vSAM, we did have to adjust it for the data areas. They were using 4K index areas, so that's not a problem. But otherwise, performance and everything else has been spot on since we converted over. Zip is running in the high 90s. And the really great part is I found 2 bugs, but they were minimal, and they were fixed pretty quickly. The client never saw the bugs. I just happened to see them. So it's really, in this one specific site, has been extremely steady and safe. And they use partitioning. They use even use star partitioning. It was a wild crossover of different uses of the data areas and stuff, and we seem to be pretty good with it.
So IBM are using the feature to sell more DASD. It's hard to believe they do that.
Yeah. I think, I hate to say this, but the number, because they were doing such efficient blocking on the sizes they were using, that was actually like adding 15 or 20% to the data areas. When you're talking 20 terabytes, that's a lot of data area. But that was what we had to do. That was the one downside, and we have no control on that, right? There's, but
for those sites that aren't that efficient in their blocking size, like sticking with 4K or 8K or something is probably not going to make a whole lot of difference.
Right. Yeah. If you're a standard site, I hate to say this, but probably 50-60% of the sites I look at still have 4K indexes and 4K data areas. So for those guys, there's no change at all. It's just for the sites that have gone to try to maximize DASD use with sizes like 27998, that immediately in your mind you go, well, let's go to 28K. Well, yeah, but then you get 1 block per track.
Right.
So you have to actually, on those guys, you actually have to pull it back to 24 or something. If you're going to go that big, pull it back to 24K or something like that.
Yeah, I think 24 was the recommended one. I didn't realize 28K was actually even an option, but I think 24 is what we've been testing with.
Yeah.
And yes, we did see a small increase, but we happen to have enough spare DASD that we can take that small hit in there.
The benefits outweigh the drawback, I would say, for most sites. So
certainly that's what we found in our testing. They significantly outweighed. So I think it's the way everyone's going to end up going. Since we're talking about sites with 4K and 8K data area block sizes, would you not recommend that, since you are reallocating everything and moving across, that you take the opportunity to move to a 24K block size, because you'll actually get better DASD utilization then and better performance?
Yeah, that's typically that's what we're doing. And even in their case, because their indexes were so big, they were moving to a larger index size. They went to, I think, 8K indexes and 24K data blocks. The interesting part with all that, obviously, is this site was committed. I mean, we started in June and finished by end of August, and we had moved everything. So for a period of time, we had the dual data pools and so forth to support that. But we only had the single index pool, right? So you have the 8K index pool, which for the 4K guys wasn't great, right? But then what we were doing was, as soon as we could, we got the indexes moved over. I mean, that was our goal, and we just paid a little bit of poor buffer use for the period between getting that database from BDAM to VSAM. But we do have other things like buffer pools by area. The other buffer pool, extra buffer pool processing you could actually set up and do if you had to keep some of the old databases out there under a different size. It's just a consideration. But now they're 100% over, and everything is, at an 8 and 24, and we see some pretty good response, and haven't had any, knocking on wood, any disturbances. All the 24/7 tools work. Everything is running well. So
I've got to drop off, guys. Thanks very much for this, Nikisha, Dale. I think it's very worthwhile.
Thank you. We are nearing the end. I thought maybe before we close today, we can cover an overview of the Mainframe Technical Exchange. Our in-person events are back, and we do have an in-person event in Prague, but the main database presence will be at the North American event in Plano, Texas, coming from June 3rd to the 15th. We would like everyone to consider joining us on June 12th, the Monday beforehand, for our pre-conference user group workshops. Space will be limited, but in that we'll be offering some pre-conference material and sessions ahead of the traditional MTE event from June 13th to the 15th. And then, of course, we will still have our global virtual event in October. Some overview of our sessions on June 12th for the pre-conference workshops here at the Broadcom office. We have a list of some sessions that we're planning to do there. Talk about our deep dive into our systems REST API. We're going to go into a deep dive on VS Code and Code4Z, how to install, configure, and deploy. Talk about our database business REST API, how to install, configure, and deploy. We're going to do 2 sessions on our vSAM Media Manager end-to-end, and also 2 sessions on our tips and tricks tuning your Datacom environment. And then coming into June 13th to the 15th, this will be held at the Hilton Granite Hotel in Plano. We have sessions for our Datacom new features. We're going to have a session highlighting SysView, a session for systems best practices and recommendations, a session for modern system security demands, a session on modernization and embrace open, one on host bridge, also a session highlighting ZOSMF and installing and maintaining your Datacom software. Owen's going to do a session on monitoring and customizing Datacom AD, and we also have a session for preparing Datacom for the next gen application developer, as well as a UX session, usability session for our mainframe database user interface. So that is kind of what we have planned for Datacom. There's plenty of other sessions on the other tracks and value streams, but here are our Datacom sessions coming up for June. Anyone have any questions or comments?
It's all good. I believe the registration's open. Are you going to put the link for the registration?
Registration is open, and those will be sent out. We can also share that through a community thread. There is a website that will be published soon, which will also provide a whole bunch of details related to the MT as well as to the pre-conference event on Monday for database. Sheila, was there anything you wanted to add onto everything I said there?
You just added, I was just going to suggest that just to keep your eyes peeled for the announcement for the actual user group workshops on that Monday. There'll be a similar landing page that, you know, similar to the one that the MTE came out with. We'll have one specific for the databases. So there is a separate registration for that, just so we can obviously determine who's going to be participating in that. And that'll also have some details around the event night, and also the details that Keisha just covered here. So that should be out. If not the end of this week, it'll be very early next week. You guys will see that in your inbox.
Thank you all. We are nearing the end of our time here, so we'll maybe skip to the end and skip past through any of the other materials to basically encourage you all to reach out to us. I'll share my details on the screen. Please reach out to us with any questions or comments or concerns. We're willing to do one-on-one sessions, talk deep dive into any topics of concern for you. Reach out if you're interested in any of our design thinking workshops, our usability studies, our Embrace Open workshops, and our Beyond Code offerings. So we look forward to hearing from you. And Len, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thanks very much. I don't see any other questions in either the chat or the questions box, so I guess we can go ahead and wrap up. So thanks everybody for your time today, and we'll talk to you next month. Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Cheers.